Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Nightwing Huntress. Last week saw revelations abound. Boss Malfatti found out his boy Frankie Black had a secret girlfriend, word spread that the murdered woman was an undercover officer, and Nightwing, at first trying to cut Huntress loose from the case, found out he really liked locking lips with her. And I discovered a Warhammer is a great way to clobber terrible comics. I'm kidding, of course. I already knew that. Issue 3's cover is a super close-up of the two making out. Please tell me Nightwing didn't take a secret selfie just to prove he got to first base with Huntress. Tacky move, circus boy. Tacky move. Minor detail, where Wing's eyes are closed, we see his eyelids, but they're not covered by the mask or anything, which would imply that the blank white eyes, when they're open, would be like specialized lenses on his eyeballs. And I thought the whole blank mask eyes thing can be confusing before. Anyway, we begin with a splash page of a shirtless Grayson, looking very surprised as Batman holds him by the throat and asks him what he thinks he's doing. Meanwhile, Huntress is off to the side with a smile on her face. I hope this mentor-mentee spat isn't another one of her turn-ons. Wasn't spontaneously making out at a murder scene weird enough? Though remembering the beginning of the New 52 with Catwoman and all-star Batman and Robin, Helena's kinks seem rather tame by comparison. This is of course a dream, and Grayson awakens in Bertinelli's bedroom, their costumes scattered after a night of passion. He pulls one of his gloves from a lampshade and exits, while letting Helena sleep. But not before getting a gander at some papers she's graded for her elementary school class. I recall she was teaching high school in Batman vs. Predator 2, so either writers are inconsistent with what level she teaches, or she just decided to change things up after a while. Anyway, he raids the fridge for some milk and calls Oracle on his wrist comm, where Babs notices the call is not coming from inside Wayne Manor. Stopping himself from saying Huntress's real name, he admits to being in her apartment.
What?
Look, my relationships with you and Starfire didn't work out, so I figured I'd be, better off with someone my own hair color. Hot gingers only lead to heartbreak. There, I said it. Even expositing about the dead undercover cop blamed on Frankie Black doesn't get Babs to let up on his fling with Huntress, suggesting Bats won't take it well. Grayson insists that Helena gets him and that he's still being discreet, and I think was about to mention that it had been a while since he'd been intimate with anyone before Barbara cuts him off, not wanting further details and apparently clutching a Batman doll like it was a stress ball. I don't know if they've ever gotten to who makes Bat merch in this universe, but if it isn't Wayne Enterprises, I imagine it's got a sting working for the Dark Knight and still having to pay full price if you want a plushie or a coffee mug for your crime-fighting lair. The Bat family deserves a discount, dang it! Oracle goes on to say that Nightwing is prone to stuff like this, clinging to anyone that's just nice to him, and that he may be afraid of being alone. Babs has worked with Huntress before, and while she may feel familiar on some level, familiar to what, she doesn't elaborate, Grayson isn't the best judge of character, and his latest lover isn't exactly stable. And who should walk in but Helena, saying that Wing is perfectly safe at her place. Not from having his grammar corrected, but otherwise totally safe. I just want to point out that, strangely enough, while Barbara has expressed several emotions, being surprised to seeming a bit angry, Grayson has seemed rather dull by comparison. He looks either bored or tired. Maybe to show he doesn't think this is a big deal, but it does seem weird to me. Like he didn't expect this kind of reaction from someone with whom he was once romantically linked. Unless I'm getting my continuities mixed up and the two weren't a thing yet. Anyway, we take a page to see Boss Malfatti take Frankie Black and his girlfriend Moira to a townhouse, seemingly isolated near a wooded area. The old man mentions that Frankie was always smart, and should stay smart, so only family pays for his mistakes, and not a friend. A veiled threat that Moira possibly heard and could easily discern as she's led inside for a tour. And Frankie doesn't look like someone concerned for his girlfriend. More like he's trying to remember something at the tip of his tongue. What was the name of Korg's alien bug friend from Thor Ragnarok? We return to Bertinelli's apartment, where that call from Oracle has abruptly ended, and Helena gets in his face about the inequitable transparency between them. So it's fine for me to let you into my home? And your tights, that's what you were going to say at first, I admit it. But you won't tell me your name or the names of any of your friends? And for the record, I don't believe you were really friends with a sword swallower or the bearded lady. Grayson wouldn't mind telling her his name, but he has to consider Batman in that scenario. Preparing some coffee, Helena says she can tell there's a thing between him and Oracle. She's not jealous, just wishes he trusted her enough to let her know. He denies any thing with the hacker, and Bertinelli seems amused that the two of them haven't figured it out yet, as she hands him the coffee before he heads out. Sometime later, he approaches 3 prostitutes for a moment of their time. Oh, come on, first Huntress and now this. The first step in recovery is admitting you have a problem.
Are you Batman?
Not this week, no. But I do a great impression. Tell me everything you know about Frankie Black, now! And after an awkward panel of silence, the blonde girl compliments him, saying she would have told him anything. Heh, you should see my flash.
Phrasing.
Want to see it again?
Hey, phrasing!
The woman in the pink wig asks if this is about the Starlight murder, saying it could have been her. She was the girl Frankie asked for, but then she was offered $200 to let the victim go instead. She wasn't aware she was a cop until she saw her arguing with a uniformed officer that looked mad, figuring they were setting up a sting or the like. With that helpful information, Nightwing takes his leave just as the brunette finally gets that flash joke. Malfatti arrives at his restaurant, where Pasquale is trying to board up the broken skylight, beginning to explain that a couple of costumes had caused the damage. Though that stepladder looks way too short, and with those boxes on top, I don't know how he managed to get that one board up there. The safety inspector would give this place quite the write-up, if the mob hadn't killed him for refusing a bribe and tossed him in the Gotham River. It doesn't matter much anyway, as Huntress uses the skylight again, kicking one of Malfatti's men upon landing. In light of some new evidence, Huntress claims to have made a deal with a cop. She brings in Pasquale, and he gives up Frankie. Or he takes the fall for the murder. The goon pleads innocence and urges his boss to tell the vigilante to leave. Go on, elderly man. Tell this much younger woman that disabled one of your henchmen in one move to get out of here, or you'll give her what for. Turns out Malfatti doesn't hate the idea, and encourages the timid lackey to turn himself in. Meanwhile, Oracle is informing Nightwing that Frankie was busted out by Malfatti, and that Moira hasn't been electronically active in the past 24 hours, both likely hidden by the old crime boss. Knowing that the cop the murder victim was with wasn't her partner Ellison, Grayson needs Babs to pull records on the officers that worked the scene. As distasteful as it may seem, they can't rule out one of the boys in blue as suspects. Since Pasquale was on cop lookout duty, he might know something, so Nightwing returns to Malfatti's restaurant. This time through the kitchen, where he sneaks up on a guy sitting down to a spaghetti dinner, handing him a fork, and then clobbering him with a skillet. Odd choice of sound effect for something made of metal. I dare say Franklin Sherman's battle cry would have been more appropriate.
Kabong!
Very good, sir.
After surprising another goon in the dining area, the GCPD show up, led by Bullock and Ellison, looking for Malfatti and Frankie, but no one else is around. Wing relays the information about Caitlyn Becker going into the Starlight with a uniformed cop, but Bullock mentions that Pasquale turned himself in an hour ago. Grayson cites the forensic reports, saying the goon was too short to have strangled the victim, and when Harv briefly turns to Montoya when she says the place is clean, he finds the vigilante has pulled a Batman and disappeared. Well, at least this time they didn't claim there was a mobile donut shop behind you, so you maintain some dignity, Harv. Later, Nightwing meets up with Huntress, saying they've got a lot to talk about. She starts, but clarifying that their tryst wasn't a sign of a relationship, just attraction and opportunity. And for her, she wanted to feel like not everything was work-related. Not hearing this because he's apparently a moron, Wing starts talking about Frankie's breakout, Pasquale confessing to a murder he couldn't have committed, and that they will be okay, but they have to find Frankie before Malfatti kills him. Bertinelli doesn't have a problem with that, but she's asked if she's okay with Frankie's girlfriend being sacrificed.
There's a her involved?
Yes? You knew that already? Am I missing something? This just seems like a weird response. Or maybe it just signifies Helena didn't know Moira had gone missing too. Though given that she knows the mob so well, you'd think that she could have suspected. In any event, she figures the damsel is as good as dead as we go to the police interrogation, where Pasquale is claiming killing Becker was a mistake and that he's really sorry. Leaving Bullock with the suspect, Ellison begins narrating into a recording device, saying that he can't stop thinking about the vigilante using the phrase "one of ours" when talking about a possible cop suspect. Someone working outside the law couldn't possibly understand what happens in the police department. Now, I initially figured Nightwing meant ours, as in people upholding the law, fighting crime and all that, regardless if it's with a badge or a cape. But by this time, Grayson was working for Bloodhaven Police, so likely he really meant a fellow cop. Nice sentiment, but yet another potentially sloppy giveaway on his part. Now, Oracle said the same thing, which reinforced my initial thinking, but being the daughter of the police commissioner, it still fits the solidarity with the badge, I think. Continuing his recording into the locker room, he encounters Officer Mason, the first on the scene for Caitlyn's murder. Ellison mentions that at Vice, they would take time in the locker room to throw out ludicrous hypotheses about each other's cases. Mostly to vent, but sometimes things would click. A buddy of mine was having trouble finding the boss of this counterfeiting ring, and I said it's probably a werewolf as a joke. Turns out it was a very entrepreneurial chupacabra, so I think I was half right. He asks Mason about his partner's murder. After locking his locker, the patrolman figures Frankie Black is guilty, Pasquale is covering for him, and he'll slip through the cracks when new evidence emerges. When asked to elaborate, he mentions the pillowcase, one of which was missing from the hotel's bed. Admiring that kind of attention to detail, Ellison later heads to the roof, turning on the bat signal only for Nightwing to show up a half-minute later. Though to avoid any animosity from Gordon, he shuts it off and suggests they chat elsewhere. Later, Ellison returns to interrogation, joined by Bullock and Mason. As he mentions to Pasquale, he found the pillowcase, presumably used to wipe up any fingerprints. The goon doesn't know what he's talking about, and Harvey wants to know what the deal is. Ellison mentions being inspired by the Rookie, and after a little investigating, found the missing pillowcase from the room his partner was murdered in, holding it in a plastic bag. He then asks Mason to guess where he found it. Could you give me a multiple-choice question? I'm much better with those. It wasn't found at Pasquale's place, so he's free to go. Mason blurts out that the Vice cop had no right to search his locker, and that it'd be inadmissible evidence. And that's exactly what Ellison wanted to hear, suggesting the Rookie make a statement and requesting a warrant to search Mason's locker. It's later revealed that Ellison was actually holding his own pillowcase after his talk with Nightwing. It makes this reveal very satisfying, even if we could tell something about Mason was off, and that he had some connection to the murder. Letting the guy's nerves get the best of him so he basically admits what he did, or at least enough to warrant a search of his effects, was a clever gamble. Unfortunately, that cleverness gets a bit derailed in the next panel. As Ellison and Harv begin bickering, Pasquale takes his leave, but not before warning the cop that for framing Frankie, he's a dead man. If the police don't take care of him, Malfati's people will. I feel like maybe it would have been a smart move to have another officer escort the goon out of the room before this big revelation. Heck, wouldn't Pasquale be in trouble for giving a false confession? At the Hall of Records, Huntress has discovered some property connected to Malfatti, with owned in quotes, so probably not entirely legal. It's in a district called Greenwood, likely where Frankie is being kept. Nightwing is impressed, but asks how she's so certain. She calls him a wise guy SOP. I don't know if that's supposed to be SOB, but further cleaned up to suggest she means son of a pup, which I doubt because it feels unnecessary, but whatever. It's the age of specialization, and hers is the Mafia. And you thought getting your associate's degree was complicated. After checking in on events unfolding at the GCPD, they'll go to Huntress's lead, and she asks if Batman leaves Nightwing the Batmobile when he's out of town as well. He leaves me a Batmobile. It's a pedal car. I don't want to talk about it. The argument between Sergeant and Lieutenant is still raging, with Ellison taking a moment to specify Nightwing's suit probably isn't spandex, more likely Kevlar or Nomex, which makes him seem like a bit of a pedantic nerd, which I actually find funny and endearing. Unfortunately, it lets Mason slip out to follow Pasquale outside as he hails a cab to his boss's estate. He then gets into a squad car and orders the driver to follow that taxi, as the issue abruptly ends. These scans must be from a trade because I double-checked my single-issue copy and there was a to-be-concluded caption in the bottom right corner. This feels like any other page and you should be expecting a more dramatic scene to close on. Maybe a splash page of the cops trailing Pasquale, but with some kind of ominous vibe. Without the caption, it felt like something was missing. So now we have a more likely suspect in this murder, but we still don't know why. How he was found out was really good, but this cop lost track of the guy that likely killed his partner because he got into a shouting match with Bullock. Feels like a mistake on both their parts, and it really makes Nightwing giving Harv the slip seem that much less impressive. But to his credit, Harvey didn't seem to believe Pasquale committed the crime, confession or no, and it's understandable that he'd be territorial about this case and not being informed about new developments. Seems Ellison isn't so different from his partner if he's dipping his toe into the waters of rebellion, though let's hope unsanctioned investigations turn out better for him when we wrap up this story next week. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.